Hey, it's Medium Jenny Lee. This is the last raw video for volume 1. This is session 56, video number 50 frickin' 7. Dawn asks, would you please give me an indication of the condition of the instrument? They're always worried about Carla. This instrument is severely distorted toward weakness of the mental and physical complexes at this time and is under psychic attack due to this opportunity. Poor Carla. Frowny face. Would it be better to discontinue the contact at this time? This is entirely at your discretion. This instrument has some energy transferred which is available. However, it's not great due to the effects of the previously stated. We, if you desire to question us further at this working, will always attempt to safeguard this instrument. We feel that you are aware of the parameters without further elaboration. In that case, I will ask, how does the pyramid shape work? Asking about the pyramid again. We are assuming that you wish to know the principle of the shapes, angles, and intersections of the pyramid at which you call Giza. In reality, the pyramid shape does no work. It does not work. It is an arrangement for the centralization as well as the diffraction of the spiraling upward light energy as it is being used by the mind-body-spirit complex. So it has to do with the spiraling upward light energy. The spiraling nature of light is such that the magnetic fields of an individual are affected by spiraling energy. Certain shapes offer an echo chamber or an intensifier for spiraling prana. As some have called this all-present primal distortion of the one infinite creator. If the intent is to intensify the necessity for the entity's own will to call forth the inner light in order to match the intensification of the spiraling light energy, the entity will be placed in what you would call the Queen's Chamber position in this particular shaped object. This is the initiatory place and is the place of resurrection. So the Queen's Chamber of the pyramid is the initiation place that has to do with intensifying the spiraling energy. I remember in the last session, the King's Chamber was where the actual healing takes place. The offset place representing the spiral is, as it is in motion, is the appropriate position for one to be healed, as in this position of an entity's vibratory magnetic nexi are interrupted in its normal flux. Thus, a possibility-probability vortex ensues. A new beginning is offered for the entity in which the entity may choose a less distorted, weak, or blocked configuration of energy-centered magnetic distortions. So they're basically like, think about it as like, they're unplugging the computer and plugging it back in, hoping that it's going to fix all the problems. And I think that it may or may not work, depending on the person, you know? The function of the healer and the crystal may not be overemphasized, for this power of interruption must needs be controlled with incarnate intelligence. The intelligence being that one which recognizes energy patterns, which without judging recognizes blockage, weakness, and other distortions, and which is capable of visualizing through the regularity of self and of crystal the less distorted other the less distorted other self to be healed. I put a star next to that because it's like super important. So the healer and the crystal are the most important part of this, I'm going to say, of this particular healing experience, because I think there are lots of different ways to heal things and a lot of different ways to heal people and entities. But Dawn's specifically asking about the pyramid and its function, so keep that in mind. Ra is saying that for this particular healing, The healer and the crystal are the most important part. The healer has to be able to recognize people's energy patterns, not judge. That is so important. Not judge what they find. Recognize where the blockages are and the weaknesses and other distortions. And they have to be able to visualize through themselves and the use of the crystal the less distorted other self to be healed. They have to be able to visualize what the person would be like if they weren't distorted and blocked up and weak. I don't know why I feel like that. Like, I just love that. I don't know. I feel it. I feel it, you know? I feel it. Other shapes which are arched, groined, vaulted, conical, or as your teepees are also shapes with this type of intensification of spiraling light. Your caves being rounded are places of power due to this shaping. Oh, so that's interesting. So the triangle is good for intensifying the spiraling light, which I guess I can see because it goes up into a point. So if it's spiraling upward, it has to all go into that point. So it's like that would require an intensification. But caves being rounded are places of power. It is to be noted that these shapes are dangerous. Okay, Ra, what? We are quite pleased to have the opportunity to enlarge upon the subject of shapes such as the pyramid, for we wish as part of our honor duty to state that there are many wrong uses for these curved shapes, for with improper placement, improper intentions, or lack of the crystallized being functioning as a channel for healing, the sensitive entity will be distorted more rather than less in some cases. So if things aren't done the right way, somebody can get distorted more instead of less. So let's keep that in mind. It is to be noted that your peoples build, for the most part, the cornered or square habitations, for they do not concentrate power. It is further to be noted that the spiritual seeker has, for many of your time periods or years, sought the rounded, arched, and peaked forms as an expression of the power of the Creator. There's a diagram of the operation of the 3 spirals in and through the pyramid in the resource series, which is not part of this book. It's probably online. Is there an apex angle that's the angle for maximum efficiency in the pyramid? Again, to conserve this instrument's energy, I am assuming that you intend to indicate the most appropriate angle of apex for healing work. If the shape is such that it is large enough to contain an individual's mind-body-spirit complex at the appropriate offset position within, the 70-degree, 18, whatever that means, foot, approximate angle is useful and appropriate, which is what Dawn mentioned in the last session. If the position varies, the angle may vary. Further, if the healer has the ability to perceive distortions with enough discrimination, the position within any pyramid shape may be moved about until results are affected. However, we found this particular angle to be useful. Other social memory complexes or portions thereof have determined different apex angles for different uses, not having to do with healing, but with learning. When one works with the cone, the silo type of shape, the energy for healing may be found in a general circular pattern unique to each shape as a function of this particular height and width. In the cone shape, the angle of apex. In these cases, there are no corner angles. Thus, the spiraling energy works in a circular motion. This is so interesting, all these different shapes. I will make a statement that you can correct. I intuitively see the spiraling energy of the Giza pyramid being spread out as it moves through the so-called King's Chamber and then refocusing to the so-called Queen's Chamber. I am guessing that the spread of energy in the so-called King's Chamber is seen in the spectrum of colors red through violet, and that the energy centers of the entity to be healed should be aligned with the spread of the spectrum so that the spectrum matches the various energy centers. Can you correct this statement? We can correct this statement. Crickets, would you please do that? The spiraling energy is beginning to be diffused at the point where it goes through the king's chamber's position. However, although the spirals continue to intersect, closing and opening in double spiral fashion through the apex angle, the diffusion or strength of the spiraling energies red through violet color values lessens if we speak of strength and gains if we speak of diffusion, until at the peak of the pyramid you have a very weak color resolution useful for healing purposes. Thus, the king's chamber position is chosen at the first spiral after the centered being through the queen's chamber position. You may visualize the diffusion angle as the opposite of the pyramid angle, with the angle being less wide than the apex angle of the pyramid, being somewhere between 33 and 54 degrees, depending on the various rhythms of the planet itself. Holy moly. Whew. I need a breather. Then I assume if I start my angle at the bottom of the Queen's pyramid and make a 33 to 54 angle from that point, so that half of that angle falls on, if Tom's carrying 50 peaches on his way to Chicago, how long does it take him to get to Atlanta? I don't know. This is like hurting my brain. Then I assume if I start my angle at the bottom of the Queen's chamber and make a 33 to 54 degree angle from that point, so that half of that angle falls on the side of the center line of the King's chamber is on, that will indicate the diffusion of the spectrum starting from the point at the bottom of the Queen's chamber. Let's say if we're using a 40 degree angle, we would have a 20 degree diffusion to the left of the center line pass through the King's chamber. Is this correct? It is correct that half of the aforementioned angle passes through the King's chamber position. It is incorrect to assume that the Queen's chamber is the foundation of the angle. The angle will begin somewhere between the Queen's chamber position and thence downward toward the level of the resonating chamber, offset for the healing work. So this is a lot. It's so much. I think if we could just sum it up just a little tiny bit here, we could say there has a lot to do with diffusion of the colors, diffusion of the energy, diffusion of the light, and it's not about the strength of the colors, but the diffusion for healing. The diffusion is important in healing, and it has to do a lot with math. Unfortunately for me, this variation is dependent upon various magnetic fluxes of the planet. The King's chamber position is designed to intersect the strongest spiral of the energy flow regardless of where the angle begins. However, as it passes through the Queen chamber position, the spiraling energy is always centered and at its strongest. So the strongest spiral goes through the King's chamber, but the spiraling energy is always centered and at its strongest in the Queen's chamber. All right, so they had to finish this session because Carla wasn't doing so good. And the last little bit to go over here is, they ask what they can do for Carla, and Ross says, to be conscious of the limitations of the instrument. We feel the alignments are excellent at this time. Go forth thence, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite creator, Adonai. That's it. We are finished. Let's look at a few pictures. Here's Dawn and Carla. They're setting up the appurtenances. The chalice, the candle. He's checking all the angles because Dawn knows how to do stuff like that. There's Carla. They got her neck all straight with a pillow. There's her stuff, Bible and all that. There's Jim. Good old Jim. Look at him. Isn't he cute? He's brushing out her hair. How sweet. They put the microphones on the blanket. They cover her eyes. There's Don with his book of questions. And Jim meditates the whole time. Can you imagine? And then when they come back, when Carla comes out of it, she's all stiff and weary, and Don gives her a massage. There's Carla at one of their houses that they lived in together. Here's some of the cats. Remember the cats? Gandalf and Fairchild. Remember Gandalf was like about to become a human being? He was moving on up because he had fallen in love with the girl cat. There's Jim. There's more cats. Joey Wackerbath is one of the cats. And Chocolate Bar. They got a lot of cats over here. There's another one of their houses they lived in. I guess that's the same one, but this one's different. Here it says, Carla dances in the leaves while Jim sits on the porch at our Lake Laner house, where we had session 106, our last conversation with Ra. So, man, we only made it through 56 sessions, and they have 106. Book number 2 will be coming. Book number 2 will be coming. Look for a woo-woo book review of this particular book all by its lonesome. And sometime in the summer, which it's January right now, I think I'll dive into volume 2. So look for those coming up this year. If you have made it through this crazy, wild, mind-bending, life-altering, spiritual, crazy woo-woo-ness of these videos, I cannot thank you enough. It's been a wild ride and very important and eye-opening. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll thank you even more if you give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. If this was the very first Raw video you watched, what? This is the last one. So you need to go back and watch all the other ones. And as always, I don't know. It feels weird to know that this is the last one for a while. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.